And welcome to the Payments Leaders Show, where I'm your host, Adrian Evans, and we have a fireside chat with leaders in the payments industry who are human-centric, who lead with the how they go about doing business and not just the what. And I'm absolutely delighted today to have Nathalie Osman on the show. Nathalie, hi.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having me, because I know you're very exclusive with people that you invite. So I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, everybody on the show is always referred in. So I've got to thank Edu for introducing us and connecting us together. So just to give you a little bit of background, you are COO of Outlier Ventures, the world's leading open metaverse accelerator program. And you have obviously a vast amount of experience in the industry and a successful track record, building and leading teams at American Express, also at Curve and Pay.uk. Your reputation precedes you in the industry as somebody who leads with compassion and also always looking to create a psychological safe environment so that people can thrive and frankly do their best work. So, thank you for taking the time out of your extraordinarily busy schedule, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Appreciate it.
So I wonder if we could start with, I wonder if you could share the foundations that have made you the individual and leader that you are today.
Yeah. Look, I think how to start? How long's the string? I think everyone becomes a leader based on the experiences they've had, both good and bad, and you take on from both of those. And you're constantly evolving as a leader based on situations. And I think the world is a very different place from when I started working. It's certainly much more fast paced. And also, I spent a large part of my careers in large corporate organizations, as you mentioned, American Express, Deloitte was before that. And I moved into smaller and smaller companies and the more leading edge of technology. And with that, I love it. I love the pace. I love learning. I love being on the bleeding edge of technology, which is where I am with Outlier Ventures and, the Web3 space, which I think is the next iteration of development for industry and payments. But I did spend a vast majority of my career in payments, and I moved into fintechs. But what I found is that the environment, while very nice for me, and I find strangely find an equilibrium in the chaos.
Okay.
For myself. It's a very weird thing because when you're in a startup environment, you can go from high, they say this, right? You can go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in one day, every day. And that does regularly happen. However, going through that every day for me, strangely, calms me down. It calms me down because there's a little bit of chaos around me, and I understand that I probably have the skill set or demeanor to help people get through it if they want. I do try my best to be authentic and transparent. Those are two things that I think are really, really important, and those people that work with me realize that I will do that to the best of my ability, as long as it's not detrimental to maybe commitments I may have made. If I can't say something, for example, like sometimes you just can't say something, right? But I'll always do my best to give the full context. Now, we do get busy in our days, and sometimes it could be a short communication, but I always tell people who work with me, just come to me if you feel like you're not, you're in the dark. It may be that I didn't realize it, or I'm not communicating enough, and if you prod me, I will help you. I always want to help people. But that's, for me, it's been a journey. So I guess if I summarize, my journey has been from large corporate to small startup. I have a set of skills that I know I can bring to that environment now, which I honed in large corporates. And now I'm bringing, so I always say I professionalize the startup environment, which I do because I have that tool set. I know what good looks like. And the chaos for me of the startup environment is actually calming on me. I recognize it's not that way for everybody, particularly if you are younger, new in role, promoted very quickly,
Yeah.
You know, those kind of things can add a lot of stress, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. But you know, for me, I've kind of been in those situations before, so I kind of know how to react. And believe me, I've been through some pretty hard times, crisis situations where businesses were about to shut down due to extraordinary circumstances. Like I got caught in the wire card thing when I was in a fintech, and we lost our entire back end business and had to put it back up in a weekend, which was one of my highlights of my career because it was
Highlights.
crisis.
Yeah.
You know, and we got back on track, and it was amazing to watch the team come together. You know, through to COVID. You know, what are we going to do? How do I make sure my people are safe? Where are my people? You know, where am I? Like, what's happening? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah. So, and then through growth, and you know, maybe these days what we hear more of is you know, reduction, cost containment, which is less fun. Yeah.
So I was always fascinated. So looking forward to this conversation, but because we always get somebody. It's really unique what you just said, which is actually the that equilibrium found in the chaos, and you bring a calmness to it. We've got to explore that more. Tell me about that, and also your value set, because you've mentioned two things there that do have constraints, which are your authenticity and your transparency. What are the values that you use as the foundation, not just of your character, but actually how you show up at work each day?
Well, I mean, I show up by wanting, I'm a people person. So I want to know the people I work with, and as much as they'll let me in. And I'll let them in as much as they let me in. You know, like it goes both ways. Right. And some people feel a guard's up. They're worried, particularly as I'm a COO, a chief operating officer. So I'm C-suite. So some people may feel guarded. I will tell people I've made a mistake when I've made a mistake. I think it's really important to say, I did this wrong, and I apologize, you know, for doing that wrong, and I'm fixing it this way. I find that being authentic is to, you know, own up, because I certainly know I'm not perfect, and I know lots of other people are, you know, trying to find what's that right way to be, and we can all get it wrong sometimes. Right? It's a human interaction. So that's my authenticity. In terms of values, I mean, I have been through hard times in my career where I've had to make some tough decisions in roles very early on. You're usually asked to make some tough decisions when you take on a new role. And that can be a bit shocking. And people don't know you. They haven't built that trust, right? And in those tough times, the one thing I did know was if people were very upset, I knew who I was, if you see what I mean. I know that I am not as scary as everybody is thinking right now, but what we're doing is we're going through a journey. And once people understand that I am open, I am going to help you in any way I can. I keep saying that to people. I want to help you be the best you can be, because that's the only way we can all collectively be the best. Of course. So I'm not one to want to make people feel bad. However, authenticity, and I say the however, means you've got to be honest and give your perspective. And that is the feedback part. And feedback doesn't always feel good, especially in the worlds that we live in, where everyone is high achieving. Everybody wants to be above the average, at the top of the curve. And I think we have to, you know, I think there's has to be a recognition that we're not always in our A game at all times. And if we are getting feedback, it's because somebody cares and wants to help you to get to that A game. I would say it's most upsetting to me when I'm trying to provide that information and the person receiving it is either not accepting it or getting very angry. Because it's not being given it's not being given to put anybody down.
Sure.
It's being given to say, look, this is what's happening. Here's where you can improve to be better. Doesn't mean that you're not worthy, you know. But I think everybody wants to be. I think there's a lot of a desire to always be at the top of the pack, and I guess in the startup environment, there's probably a lot of pressure to always be in your A game, right? There's a lot of talk about that, but let's be honest, we can't always be in our A game, especially if we've just been promoted or taken on a new team or there's a new client. You know, you've got to work through that, or you're new to a company. You know, there's a building in phase, right? So you've got to build on that. Yeah, I think I just gave you a lot there, Adrian.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm just, if we just, I just really, before you give feedback, are there any critical steps that you see? Because it's obvious your intention is never to offend, never to upset, never to anger. Are there any steps you do in terms of the specificity of the feedback or the relationship that enable, you know, you've given feedback a lot to a lot of people, it's part of your job. Is there any other steps you'd advise people to have to try and do?
It's nice if the feedback's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Right. So you're building up towards that feedback. I would say that that's the biggest. Don't let it be a surprise. Never talk about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, here's your year-end review, and these are the 10 things. Yeah, here are the 10 things that you don't know. I think it's better to avoid that. And to have those conversations in the one-to-ones along the way.
Sure.
How specific to be about that, and to like call it out, like, this is feedback I'm giving you this week. You know, can you work on that? Is maybe something to strive for, to call it out, to be very specific that you're doing that at that point in time.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Again, you want to always balance it, because you also want to be very encouraging in a one-to-one. And how can I help you to do things well? Oh, you might want to think about doing something that way. You know, a lot of my one-to-ones are about exploring how to get through a problem.
Brilliant,
you know.
Brilliant. So that's a collaboration in terms of your approach to one-to-ones, or whether it's end of quarter, end of year, whatever it means. But it's about, it seems to me as well, it's about engaging with that individual, so there are no surprises.
Yes. Yeah, that's the ideal. That's the ideal.
Okay.
and then you know, when you get to the year end, I mean, you should recognize if there is feedback. You should recognize.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you're passionate about developing an environment that avoids burnout. Now, we just talked about high achievement environments, and obviously everybody wanted to be on the right and upper part of any curve. And so how can you share your lens? Because I know this is something you're very passionate about.
I'm passionate about it because I see a lot of people in their careers hitting that burnout point. And it does have to do with wanting to be the best, not drawing the right boundaries. And the common feedback I get is, I'm junior, so how can I? There's a deadline that senior management or somebody has given. And in order to meet that, you know, I have to work all these hours. And I think there's a couple of things. In as much as you can, burnout is something that you can be aware of, in terms of people who've been through it. They know when they're about to reach that point. You know, and they can talk about it and say, I think I'm reaching that point. I need to do X, Y, and Z if they've been through it. But I would like people to avoid having gone through it, because it can be life altering. And you don't want that kind of stuff to happen always, or sometimes it's exactly what you needed to happen. I don't know, but let's go with the premise that we want to avoid radical things happening in life, because that's not the right way to be. I do think it is in everybody's best interest to outline where their boundaries are. The example I give is when I first became a mom, I had very defined boundaries to pick my child up from daycare.
Yeah.
If I, there was no, you just couldn't be late. It's just not, it wasn't an option. And funny enough, because there was no other option, I was able to leave the office, at the same time because I had no other option. And if you look at your life that way and say, I have no other option, otherwise I will be burnt out. And this is when I have to stop. It's the time warp, right? You can be highly effective if you know you've got to shut something at a certain time. And you need to treat yourself as you would your dependents, if you see what I mean. So I would say it a little bit starts with you. Now, I do understand, and we are all asked to do things. I've worked weekends and late evenings at times, and we can all do that at times. It's when it becomes too consistent that there needs to be a real conversation. And you need to have that confidence to have that conversation and to say, I won't do this. And if you're doing a good job, I think that will be listened to, and you shouldn't have it. You also need to know the signs that it's coming. Signs like I'm losing sleep. I'm anxious all the time. I'm scared to go into work. I'm constantly, I'm unhappy. I'm slightly depressed. I'm crying at nothingness. I am, having a conversation and the least thing might set me off emotionally. These are all signs that your burnout is coming, or, and you need to avoid that, because again, if you are not able to control your emotions, you're not at your best. And I say that as a very emotional person. I say that you can be very emotional at work, happy, sad, engaged, enthusiastic. These are all great things. Angry and mad and aggressive, and hostile. Those are not the things you want to be.
Not productive. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's exactly the right word, Adrian. You want to make sure what you do is productive. I like that. Yeah. It's a endemic of the startup community at all levels. Burnout, all levels. I think we all collectively have to take control of it to change the industry.
Brilliant. I love how you. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and as a leader, we need to not blame a person who's getting to that point. And be really supportive of, you need to take the time off. You need to do these things to avoid it.
Yeah, I think there's a leadership responsibility there. But I really like the way you've broken that down there and said that it does start with the individual. And actually, I think one of the interesting things as well is you're saying this, it is a choice, and we can raise our awareness. Obviously, coaching is a big part of what I do, and raising awareness and taking responsibility. There are two dimensions there that are really interesting. And, I've got close to experiencing this myself many, many years ago. But I love the way you've sort of broken that down, and the non-negotiable, the example you gave from daycare, it was like non-negotiable. This is what's happening every day. This is where it's going to be, and how it's going to take forward. So, thank you for sharing. I know many will appreciate that, because we all work. The payments industry and the startup world is highly competitive, and so that's going to be sort of key areas there for people to look at. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, I'm reliably informed, and you mentioned it yourself earlier, you're a leader who's committed to learning yourself, to lead with curiosity, decency, and inclusion. Can you share, first of all, where that comes from? And then secondly, what's the link between curiosity, decency, inclusion, and commercial success?
Okay. Hugely passionate about diversity in all aspects. Because of how I grew up. I grew up in suburbs of New York City. Highly diverse community, where well, white was close to a minority. We had a lot of school spirit and all of that. When I started working as well in New York City in my early career, my focus was on making sure I continued to have a very diverse set of friends in terms of backgrounds, nationalities, where they worked, all that kind of thing. So that's where I thrive because it's what I enjoy. I really believe that if you have all types of diversity in your teams, you have much better outputs. I see it firsthand. I think some industries are still, and I'm in tech, right? So there's a lack of women in tech. There's a lack of ethnic minorities in tech. And I really always want to change that. It's been something that I've worked on a lot, and I make sure, and just to be really clear on how I make sure I do that, the direction that I always give when we're hiring is that we make sure that the funnel is as diverse as we possibly can have. Best person gets the job in the end, but we have to have a diverse interviewing funnel. And it's led to some really fantastic, outcomes. I bring that with me everywhere I go. My teams are always very diverse. And I continue to do that. And if it takes me longer to find those people, I will take longer to find those people. Again, has to have the right skill set, has to have the right culture at the end, but making sure I have the right funnel is really important to me.
Yeah.
Now, the second part of your question is, how do I weave? Again, it's a long question, so you'll have to remind me.
Yeah. So how you're leading with, so just on the commercial success, you see them as interwoven between decency, inclusion, etc. A bit of an unfair question for me as well, but you lead with curiosity, decency, and inclusion. So just perhaps tell us a bit more. You mentioned about your background there. Where does that come from? Because it shines through you with how you lead and how you interact with people.
Where does it come from? Always having been an underdog myself.
Okay, honest. I love your honesty. Brilliant. Tell us more. Tell us more.
Look, I really have always had, nothing's ever come easy to me, ever. I've always had to work hard for everything I've done. And, I studied hard. I interview hard. I go all in. I put my all in things. While I've never had this thing people talk about, I'm sorry to say, I know it exists, but I've not ever had imposter syndrome, but that's because nothing's ever come easy to me. I've really had to work for it, if you know what I mean. So like when I finally do get it, it's like, I know I put the time into that one. Whereas in some situations, some things can come about a little bit easier to some people. And then they get there and they're like, oh my gosh, I have all this amazing stuff. And how did I get this? You know
exactly how you got it.
Yeah, I'm like, I really feel like I rode for this one.
Brilliant.
Also, I've had my share of, setbacks. I've had my share of really think about what the priorities were in my life. I mean, I have, now 2 grown daughters, so I'm on the other end of having been a mom, but that also impacts a lot of your life because you want to be both a good worker and a good mom. Of course. And they are sometimes diametrically opposed at times. So you have to struggle through that. And also I'm someone who's really grateful for the experiences I've had. And I believe you should be grateful, not angry, for experiences you've had. Because, everything helps you to grow, even those bad ones.
I'm always looking for amazing sound bites from my conversations with guests. I think that's it. Be grateful, not angry, for your experiences you've had. Just wonderfully encapsulates the obvious mindset you have. I love that again. Nobody's ever said that to me before. I knew you were going to say imposter syndrome, but it's like I haven't got any because I've worked super. Nobody's ever said that before, but I love it for somebody also.
I'm sorry to say that, but I completely understand.
Yeah.
People who have had it, but yeah, it's yeah.
Wonderful. No, I love that. The thing, I can see the work. It's fine. I like that.
Yeah.
And I love the way you hold that lightly as well. There's not a bitterness. There's not a so wonderful. So just to do a little bit deeper on that, if we can, we both share a passion for reducing and surpassing the gender opportunity and pay gap. And this came to me really in life last summer when my daughter, she got a job and I knew she was being differently paid than the guy who'd done it before. And having a dad as a career coach, she's going to get a little bit of advice on negotiation. It's going to happen.
Yes.
But we share that passion about, much wider for me about enabling people to be appropriately rewarded for the value they add. That's a big driver for me. But tell me about your lens on the gender pay gap.
My lens is it definitely still exists.
Yep.
My lens is that you have to do the analysis.
Yep.
Because even as a woman leader, every time I do the analysis, I'm sometimes surprised. Because it creeps in, and it's not always it's not always coming from a place of deliberateness.
Yeah, fair point.
It's happening. It's unbiased. It's a unconscious bias that happens. And when you put the facts down, it just brings it to light. And I've been known to, highlight, these things, but I do it always factually. When you have lists of people and you're doing your top people, or you're doing the people you want to, to let go, or you're taking a look at different jobs, I'm constantly doing in this case, the gender or ethnic minority gap analysis, and highlighting it so that we as a management team are always aware of whether or not it's happening.
Okay.
So I do it without I just do it with numbers.
Okay. Where do you get, because it's fascinating to hear that, but where do you get the confidence, the boldness to present that data and say, this is good governance. This is good practice, by the way. This is great practice, as we know what good does look like, but it's increasingly rare. So where do you get the confidence to say, this is the forum, this is uncomfortable, but this is true?
Where do I get the confidence? Because it's the right thing to do. I don't know. It's just the right thing to do. So why would I not be confident? Why there's always going to be a set of excuses, but the data will speak for itself. I'm not talking about a one-off case. I mean, sometimes it is a one-off case, but most often I'm taking a look at a group, and then it's a very, and in some cases I can see quite clearly. So my confidence just comes from doing what's right. And there's enough research now I don't feel like I have to pontificate and explain. I just show. And I've done it time and time again. And I'm not just honing in on one job. It's like every time I'm in, and I move around a lot, as you can see from my CV. So, it's, I just know that if I take a look, I'm usually going to uncover something. So the bottom line is it's still there. You have to consciously think about it and look at it probably yearly. Larger companies in the UK are meant to do a gender pay gap analysis. When you're looking in startups, they don't have to do that. They're below the threshold of employees. However, it's just good practice to take a look.
Yeah, agree.
Good practice to take a look. Do you have any women? I'll start with women. The reason I start with women, just to be clear, it's because women are 50% of the potential, well, the population and potential
Absolutely.
workforce. So I start there because there's no reason why. There shouldn't be 50% women in your management team, in your workforce.
Right.
So, you keep drilling down. So I start with women, but of course, you should also, ethnic minorities as well. You should be thinking about those percentages as well. If you want to go pure numbers is a nice way to start. But yeah, so I just, take a look at that. I've been very lucky as the teams that I have been a part of, and it is part of why I choose companies, is because they are usually very diverse. So yeah, to start with.
So I love that answer. It's something called decency quotient, which is because it's the right thing to do. Full stop. Yeah. That's just the way to conduct yourself, how we conduct ourselves does matter so much. Thank you. So just who's been most influential on you becoming, it's obvious like today and your reputation as well in the industry, you show up as you. So who's been influential in you becoming that authentic leader?
I don't think there's one person.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that, would like to thank my mom and my dad. No.
Of course.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that.
Patience, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's that. I just think I appreciate when somebody shows me their weaknesses and their humanity.
Yeah.
Especially when you're down. When somebody reaches out and says, hey, I know you've just, I don't know, you had a hit, let's say you had a bad meeting, or your project didn't go as well as you wanted, or you're just not feeling well that day in a business environment, even in a personal environment. The fact that somebody just reaches out and says, I know you're not doing well, that authenticity is super important. And trying to do that, I think, to others when they're having that is something that I do strive for, every day. And I try to do that by being honest. Yeah, because that's the only way I know how to do it. So there's a lot of other stuff wrapped up into that, because if I'm going to be honest, I'm also American, so I'm very direct. And there are some cultures that don't accept that directness as much as, two Americans can have a conversation, be super direct and not feel upset.
Yeah.
And my little side story is I was at an event, and, it was speaker drinks, and I was there, and I got away from somebody that I realized, the conversation wasn't going somewhere, by being polite and saying, I'm going to get myself a drink. So I went to get myself a drink, polite. It wasn't like, hey, we're done. I'm sorry for the side story, but, and then, so I was trying to be polite, and then I got my drink, and I turned around, and there were two gentlemen that were there, and they were Americans, and we started talking, and we quickly realized there's not much. There's not much there. And one of them just said to me, okay, well, it was nice meeting you. Kind of dismissed me. Yeah. And it made me, I wasn't offended at all. It made me smile, because it was very direct. We obviously both know we're done here. This isn't, and I just was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, well, it's nice to meet you. I kind of walked away. But I know some cultures would take extreme offense to that. I'm telling this cute little story to say that, so I can be sometimes very direct. And so sometimes it is received like, and then we have to have a discussion around it. Again, that's authenticity, because that's who I am. I'm a direct person. And I often say that up front. I will tell people, like, look, if I say something wrong, we'll have a discussion about it. Oh, and please don't ask me in writing in Slack, because my Slack etiquette is abysmal, and I know it. And let's have a conversation. And I always say, I tell that to people, and I'm always like, if something starts escalating on Slack, we've got to move away as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Can I tell you how often, though, it keeps escalating? And it's like, no, we're going to talk. We're going to talk.
Yeah. Oh. You should run around so many businesses saying that, because there's so much tonality missed, expression, etc.
yeah.
You just look there, etc. So I was only chatting to we had a customer service issue yesterday, and I was looking at a chat bot, and I was like, I am talking to a robot. I was like, please let me speak to a person. I'm dying to speak to a person. But it changes dynamics completely. But again, showing up like that, not being an excuse there, but just saying, this is the intent. This is the intention. This is the intention of the communication. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is the sort of that let's reflect back on your life. So you know, what do you wish you knew earlier in your life that you know as you sit here today? Is almost if you were having your conversation with your 21-year-old self, or you know, after second job, after first job, etc., that mid-20s. But what conversation would be having with yourself today, Nathalie? What would you be saying?
I would have told my 20-year-old self, you're going to achieve a lot more than you ever thought you would.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah, because I really actually had no real thoughts on what my potential could be. Maybe I didn't actually really believe in myself even that much. And then as I've gone through different steps and, you know, experienced also rejections and ups and downs, and, you know, it's never been a straight, at times in my career, it was a straight ladder type, you know,
Yeah.
but at other times it's been that jungle gym of you know, journey, with my share of rejection, with my share of success. But isn't that life? Isn't that what we all kind of go through? And I think you just acknowledge what you've been through. Yeah, I mean, still more to come, I guess. You know, we'll see what's, you know, what's on the horizon. You know, I don't have, I always say, you know, just shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
You land on the moon, you're happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and this is where I normally try and gather sort of 2 or 3 core parts that that are sort of a summary. But I've got over 2 pages of notes here, so I wonder if you mind if I just sort of summarize some of the key points we've made. Would that be okay? That you've shared?
Yeah.
So first of all, it's obvious for me that you love being at the bleeding edge of technology, and actually, but fascinating, you went straight in there and said, actually, there's an equilibrium you find in the chaos, and it brings you a calmness. But actually, what you're able to do is take that calmness and actually spread that to others and assist them. Showing up with the duals tenets of authenticity and transparency is a key part of your character. Undoubtedly, you're a people person. I think everybody can see that, or who's sort of tuning in at the moment. But leading with values and leading with how can I help, because we're going to need some support along this. This being key. I liked the way then we talked about particularly burnout, to recognize, let's raise the awareness of that at an individual level and a company-wide level. And actually, as leaders, can we make sure that we don't judge people like that, but how can we get a productive way out of this? And also about people recognizing the value of boundaries. You gave a great example of where you set a non-negotiable with childcare and you stuck to it. And actually, if anything, that sounds like that actually sort of builds your confidence in this space. But also, you said something as well about treat yourself as well as you would treat a dependent. I love the sort of oxygen mask analogy there that we whenever we get on a plane. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And then we talked about more then about the connection between decency and inclusion and commercial success. And it seems like you grew up with that in the suburbs of New York, and you didn't just have a good football team. You went on to sort of, this is natural part of your DNA. But actually, do you know what? We're better when we do that. It's interesting for me as well how you said about not having any imposter syndrome, because you work damn hard at whatever it is. You could see there's no surprises when you've got promoted or when you've got a new job, or where it's like, I can see the stack. I've seen how hard I've rode to get here on that front. So, but I think the standout for me was when you said about life generally, was saying be grateful, not angry, with the experience you've had in life. And I think that's a lovely way of actually holding success and failure really nicely.
We all have it. We all have it, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way you shared about failure as well, because somebody being totally successful is a myth. It's a total myth. I don't know anybody successful all of the time on that front. And then when we talked about the gender pay gap, you said actually it's about doing the right thing. And they do a lot of work in governance in this area. And the truth is, we can look at policies, we can look at processes, we can look at everything else. But that one sentence, if boards operated like that, we'd have a far less problem with governance. So thank you. And also then you said about actually one of the ways you connect with people is when you try and show your humanity, particularly to somebody with a level of weakness, or you can just sense that it's been a bad meeting, they're not having a great day, there's something you don't understand, and actually it sounds like you've received that as well. And then actually, I love what you said here about what you having a chat with your sort of mid-20s self, which is go for it. You've achieved far more than you ever thought possible. There's still more to come, but actually let's explore that potential. Let's reach out further and actually achieve even more. So they were my takeaways, but it's been a fascinating conversation. So thank you.
Well, and you summarized it beautifully. So thank you for capturing everything that I was saying more eloquently than I did.
Well, no, I got the easy job. The easy job, you provide all the wonderful material. I've just got to summarize it. Is there anything you'd like to leave as a closing statement at all?
I would actually,
Wonderful.
because I'm at the forefront of technology, and a lot of my colleagues are younger, and at not the start of their career, but they're at the start of what I consider the start of their lives. And I think my biggest message is do work hard, but please make sure you have life stages, whatever those life stages are. Make sure that you're doing things for yourself and growing in your personal life. And I say this only because I work with a lot of founders, and there's a lot of work that goes in there. Just don't forget your personal life, and give yourself the opportunity to have those life stages. So I think that would be my big message.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I know the audience is gonna love that. So that's an amazing message to leave with the audience. So thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Adrian. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.